Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? The mute button finally decided to cooperate with me. About 5 attempts at that one. Hey, it's Tuesday, July 7th, 2026. Time to do this whole thing all over again. The World Cup is over. As far as I'm concerned. There's plenty of the party still going on. We just have to host it now. That's all our job is. The United States eliminated from the World Cup. I would blame that on Trump. Go ahead. You might as well. Everybody else is. Once again, anything he turns his gaze to, much less even lays a hand on, pretty much dies. And I think I did see somebody summing this up by saying, well, we lost, but at least it looks like we also cheated. It's fantastic. So anyway, the Belgians have mostly forgiven us. The good news is that those of you on Blue Sky know that it is now finally okay to hate waffles. No one will question you, so long as I guess they're Belgian in origin. But even that, of course. Well, why? How could you hold this against them? But if you've been looking for an opening to get away with waffle hating for some reason, or just make a joke at the expense of all of our disappointment in the result yesterday, but what are you going to do? It was, the United States men's national team did very well compared to past years, but it doesn't have the standing in the international sport that the women's team does for various reasons. I don't know if I can put my finger on all of them, but we're much improved by the participation in international competition, as well as raising the bar in the competition here in our own Major League Soccer, and bringing international stars in and raising the profile of the game. It's been fun. I've watched far more other games than United States games. There just haven't been enough to offset that. The whole world is participating in this thing. I don't know if you know about that. But anyway, it'll be interesting to watch the exciting conclusion. I'll enjoy it. Big battle of the cross flags. When does that happen? Is it today, tomorrow? The next I have to check the schedule. Norway versus England, I think, is the next one in my sights. But, lots of other action going on. It's in my sights mostly because Greg and I were talking about the giant cyborg who plays for Norway. And I think I blurted out his name the other day, and then I doubted myself. Haaland, I don't know how he pronounces it, or how Norwegians pronounce it, but Haaland, and then I thought, oh no, that's not right, because I must be thinking of Deb Haaland, the New Mexico, former congresswoman from New Mexico, and then Secretary of the Interior in the Biden administration. Do I have all that right? I was right anyway. It's the same name. And Deb Haaland, though she is of Native American heritage, is also of Norwegian heritage through her father. I looked it up just to check it out when I got confused about that. Haaland. That does seem odd. I mean, Haaland didn't seem like a particularly common Native American surname, so it makes sense that, okay, maybe it came from elsewhere. And it did. And it's Norway. So how do you like that? That's pretty interesting. I mean, her father was American, but I guess of Norwegian heritage. And then he got saddled with the Haaland name. I don't know. And I don't know how common Haaland is as a surname in Norway, or whether there would be any relation. Who knows? How exciting would that be? Not very much for me, but more for others, I guess. Okay, well, sounds like our volume is a little bit low again today, which is too bad because I have run out of ideas for how to boost the thing. I'm repositioning the microphone in the hopes of getting a clearer signal, but that may be all I've got for you. And, oh, look at this. All of the batteries and all of my accessories are running down too. So hopefully everything will hold together for the day. There's lots to report. Much more than just the soccer, as it turns out. And golly, it's too bad that it's Tuesday. I mean, it's better than it being Monday in a sense, but it also means that Greg Dworkin is not here to absorb the news from the Graham Platner camp, which I guess we'll just do tomorrow instead. And then we'll probably have a better idea of exactly what the official news is, because we are hovering at the moment, I think, officially in, well, I'm thinking about it, land. As you will have heard by now, and no matter how you might feel about it, another accusation of, well, I don't know how, I mean, really, just if I leave it, another accusation, and a credible one at that, of another type of red flag behavior, and this is perhaps one of the worst. A sexual assault accusation, I mean, it's just a flat-out rape accusation, from a fairly credible source, moved very quickly through online world, and I guess once it was reported that it was looming for wide release, you began to see things fall apart in the Platner camp online. This has been very interesting to see people who are very strong supporters, but in particular, I think it's not so much that people are worried about what the people who are strong supporters are saying, just regular strong supporters saying, oh yeah, I didn't know about this. This is actually bad, and I'm leaving. There's one thing. What everyone was watching was, I want to see the reactions from people who were such super fans and boosters and promoters of his candidacy that they brushed aside other accusations along the way. And then it turns out there's even a few people out there who got wind of this accusation and brushed this accusation aside until it was further developed as a story, and then it became inevitable. It's really quite wild. And I think it was, if I saw it correctly, Zaid Jalani, who in fact had gotten wind of this particular accusation and still brushed it off because I guess the particulars hadn't been investigated and reported, and now they have been. And it's kind of inevitable and it's kind of unavoidable, but I think officially we are in. Graham Platner says, I'm taking some time to reevaluate whether or not we're going to go forward with the campaign. The technical side of the story is, I understand from 5,000 people who have reposted this information, that the rules in Maine are such that he has until, I don't know what time. I think it was like 5 p.m. We can close the business on July 13th. Today, of course, July 7th, so just under a week. And the July 13th date is, I guess, the deadline for the party, the Democratic Party of Maine, taking some action, and they have a wide variety of options open to them, although not very much time to execute any of them, for replacing him on the ticket for November. So it's doable, and there are some options out there, including one, the party executive committee, or such as it is, can convene and make a decision on behalf of the Democratic Party of Maine, and everybody just has to live with it. And everybody has their doubts about that one, Graham Platner included. I mean, he's got a point. He's in addition to his own future, I guess, concerned that there be someone on the ballot that Democrats in Maine feel like they could support and feel like they did support, like some votes were cast for this person, rather than just being selected by the party. Though I'm not sure how much his opinion counts in all this at the moment, but other people will certainly feel the same way. There are proposals out there that they hold a quick caucus of some sort, or convention, which would at least involve activists who are, I guess, available at some point during the week, this week, or maybe the weekend, to come together. And as you know, in Maine, it's very difficult or sometimes impossible to get there from here. So, it's not going to be easy for everybody to get to something like that. You could do, as we occasionally do here in Virginia, what they call firehouse primaries. And I think I saw David Dayen referring to them as lighthouse primaries. I don't know if that was supposed to be a joke or they really call them that in Maine, but, picking some central location for essentially a quickie primary. But because it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, including lots of time for running a campaign, they call it something else. And it's essentially a diffuse convention. And registered Democrats from all over can find those central locations near them and come and cast a quick ballot. I did also see a very interesting suggestion. I'm going to have to go scrolling through my Blue Sky feed in order to find it and credit it properly and explain it properly. But if I remember it correctly, the idea was, I'm going to have to, how far back was this thing? The idea was, well, Maine uses ranked choice voting, and what they could do in order to find a Democratic candidate who might stand in on this. There it is. Jonathan Cohen had written this one yesterday, and Jonathan puts it this way, of course, by way of reading you the bio. Editor and political director for Progressive Mass, Massachusetts, that is. And the suggestion is put this way. What's great about ranked choice voting, and we're looking for things that are great about it. What's great about RCV is that you can take the Maine governor ballots. And, I also miss Greg today because we would have a chance to say gubernatorial here. But take the Maine gubernatorial primary ballots, ranked choice voting being used here, redistribute the votes from Hannah Pingree, and produce another candidate with a statewide majority from Democratic primary voters if you need to. That is an interesting thought. Of course, the votes were cast for somebody running for governor. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Clearly, the point is that you've got a data set out there, and it's interesting, too, to draw from the gubernatorial race as opposed to the Senate race. But I guess in the Senate race, the second choices, third choices, whatever there might have been in the race didn't garner 50%. But you could I guess you could redistribute the Graham Platner votes, but maybe there weren't enough, and I don't know. But there's something interesting in taking it from the other race. It's sort of there's a distance there. And, none of these people are going to be, if you select from the gubernatorial race, they're not going to be sore losers about the Senate race trying to claim the mantle. They might be sore losers about the gubernatorial race, but they're claiming a different mantle. Why not? I had no idea anybody would consider me for the Senate seat. But that you could then get someone who you could at least posit that a majority of Democratic voters in the state felt they could support in some capacity, even if it was running for governor, and then say, all right, well, why don't we translate to the Senate? It's an interesting thought and might avoid the trouble, expense, difficulty, what have you, of any of the other options. One, it includes voters, so diktat from the Central Committee would be avoided. Votes were cast. Yes, they were cast under slightly different circumstances, and you wouldn't have to convene it again or undertake the costs or trouble of administering a lighthouse primary or whatever you wanted to call it. I thought that was a really interesting suggestion, maybe one of the better suggestions I've ever seen with what to do with all the garbage that RCV produces. It's very, paper intensive. And we need renewables used in all of this. Anyway, you get the idea. I thought that was really pretty interesting. And now we have to keep an eye on how Maine will handle it and whether or not Platner can get it together to bow out gracefully or whether people will make a stink on the way out. It's been really interesting watching. Well, unfortunately, there was so much pushing and shoving and pushback going on between the camps and the run-up to the primary that there's a lot of hard feelings. So a lot of people, taking plenty of people saying, hey, I hate to say I told you so, and I really do, and so I'm not going to, linger on it, but good. And a lot of people saying, haha, told you, he's a jerk, you're so dumb for not seeing it, not helpful. Still also a few people in his camp saying, yeah, this is a real disappointment, but the only realistic option at this point is to replace him through some method. And a few people, no, all of this is bull, this is a false accusation, and I never meant it when I said you should be listening to women, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, there's a little bit of everything in the mix, I will say that. But yeah, a lot of finger pointing and a lot of people disappointed in the podcast bros, which I guess we are. But we didn't exactly jump on the Platner bandwagon. I can't claim to have said, no, I'm telling you, I don't know what the story is yet. I can't put my finger on it, but no, you cannot support him. I didn't do that. And there would be no point in my having done that. I'm not from Maine, and I don't know him all that well. But yeah, I mean, I will say this. All I can tell you about it, and it bears not at all on the sexual assault accusation, but I never understood that this idea that people were like, I didn't know what a Totenkopf was. I didn't know that was a Nazi symbol. And I'm like, watch a movie, I guess. I don't know. I mean, people didn't know, or people who I believe them when they say they didn't know, say they didn't know. And not everybody pays attention to that. But I mean, I'll put it this way. I've never seen a movie involving Nazi characters in uniform that got that wrong, that like put a swastika on the hat where the Totenkopf really was, or on the lapels. And, I don't understand how that could happen and you didn't notice it. But, maybe you were witness to the horrific violence and dehumanizing behavior of the Nazis characters rather than the details of their uniform. Anyway, I don't know that I ever really thought that definitely meant, well, he's a committed Nazi. I mean, few people are, really. Even when you're working for Blackwater, you're probably thinking you're the good guys. But it was a super dumb one. And then, of course, trying to cover it up, not literally the covering up the tattoo, but trying to cover for yourself by saying, oh, I didn't know. I thought it was a pirate symbol and nobody ever heard of it. And every time I showed it to people, they also didn't know, but also stop taking your shirt off in place. Whatever. So I guess we'll see officially how this race settles itself in the next couple of days. I don't mind. And actually, we were hearing just the other day that maybe there was some polling that suggested, well, he's not a shoo-in, certainly, against Collins. It's always going to be a tight race against Collins. I don't know why that is, but that's Maine for you. It's just been going on for 100 years. They're just voting for Susan Collins for no particular reason. Oh, yeah, right. One of the best shots back across the Republican bow and all of this that I saw was that Susan Collins knows now that Graham Platner doesn't belong in the Senate. She says he belongs on the Supreme Court, where she doesn't mind if people with allegations like this are confirmed with her vote. But anyway, lots of other things to catch up on, and there are a lot of them. So, and we'll be discussing this again tomorrow because Greg is going to need to have his say in all this. Although I wouldn't be surprised if by Wednesday his take on it was, well, that happened, and a lot of people, I guess, thought it might. Anyway, I guess while we're on the subject, and I guess we are, there were a lot of, there's a lot of good writing about it very quickly. And you know what? Here is an interesting piece that was circulated. I don't know how much stock to put in this one, but at this point, there's probably very little reason to go over the factual recitation of what happened here. You've likely seen it or seen enough about it to have understood what happened here. Michelle Goldberg over in the New York Times opinion section had a piece widely shared and variously reviewed, anywhere from, well, good, you are disavowing this campaign that you kind of bought into and admitting your mistake, and she does. And then also, of course, there was reactions like, yeah, but this, this is indicative of a broader problem about the opinionating class, they seem to get suckered by stuff like this with some fair frequency. Not always about one candidate or candidacy, but sometimes about an idea or an idea about other people's ideas and what they mean. But mostly, I think people were saying, well, I'm glad she's acknowledging that, opinion writers can sometimes hold a very poor opinion, and it's time to admit it. The lessons from the Graham Platner disaster, which hasn't concluded just yet, but Michelle puts it this way: hopefully by the time you read this, which is now, Graham Platner will have dropped out of the Senate race in Maine. I believe we're still waiting on that, but I wasn't monitoring things early this morning. If he hasn't, he needs to immediately. His campaign, which started with such excitement and inspired so many people in Maine, and that is a sad part about it too, but he did say some exciting things and take the right positions on a few, important issues that somebody else, already has. That's how he had a majority of support among Democrats in Maine, and probably would feel perfectly comfortable articulating on their own, as their own position, because it matched, and that's why they were excited about his candidacy. If he won a majority of the Democrats in Maine, should be, convincing anybody to stand for a Senate race in this day and age is probably a tough sell. But there will be no shortage, at least technically, in Maine of Democrats who believe the same thing and have behaved better during their lifetime. Anyway, his campaign, which started with such excitement and inspired so many people in Maine, has become a shameful catastrophe. Yeah. What's left, besides finding a Democrat to run in his place, is figuring out what, if anything, can be learned from this debacle. I think one of the lessons people are drawing is, I don't know if I love the consultants who propped this guy up, although it should be noted that the consultants who propped that guy up, if you're looking to point fingers, they also were big in selecting and propping up Zoran Mamdani. Nicer guy, big success story so far. So I don't know that objectively, is the track record of that set of the subset of the consultant class worse than anybody else's track record? I don't know if we can say that at this point. But anyway, what can be learned from this debacle? As you probably know by now, Politico published a story on Monday about a woman, Jenny Rasico. Is that how she pronounces it? Like Mark Rasico did? All right. Who says that Platner raped her. That's it. According to Rasico, they'd been romantically involved on and off for more than 2 years when he showed up at her house drunk and uninvited one night in 2021, that's not a long time ago, and let himself in and forced himself on her. She confided her ordeal to a man she dated after Platner, as well as to her therapist, and showed Politico text messages she sent in 2023 warning an acquaintance away from him. Her account is completely believable and completely devastating. I think I also saw some interesting comments from journalists, or at least one journalist, who said that she has a lot of experience editing and getting ready for publication articles, leveling such accusations or investigating accusations that have been made against someone else. And this one has kind of checks off all the boxes for credibility, the kinds of things they like to check against before they run a story like that. I offhand don't know what they are, but I can make an educated guess about that. But I think the contemporaneous messaging has a lot to do with that. When people say, well, why didn't she report him? That's explained in her own story, why you don't do things like that. And by the way, the roundabout way that I recall it was explained, not having combed through every inch of all these articles, was essentially, I felt, at the time, I kind of felt, I clearly what he did was wrong, but I felt bad for him. He's clearly suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and the alcoholism was a part of it. And I don't know if he's officially alcoholic or whatever, but the reliance on self-medication, and then why not come forward earlier in the campaign? Well, people were invested in this guy, and it's important race in the Senate, and Democrats stand to, gain or lose control of the country on a single race. And, you got a question of what's best for the country in front of you. And by the way, somebody else did point out quite rightly that this is pretty much the explanation that Dolores Huerta gave for not coming forward with her story about Cesar Chavez all those years. There was a bigger issue at stake, and you were torn. But anyway, still people pointing at that. Well, why not earlier? Well, why do we ask these questions every single time? Anyway, Platner denies Rasico's accusations, at least for the moment, but seems to realize that his campaign may no longer be viable. In a video posted on social media, he said, regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict, we are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward. But that time needs to wrap up, she concludes. Not the conclusion of her article yet, but this is probably all we can get in before the break. That time needs to wrap up. According to Maine law, Platner has to drop out by next Monday for Democrats to replace him on the November ballot. Okay, and it just occurred to me that somewhere I have left my phone with my alarm out of reach, so that's going to ring in the background while I get ready for this break. I'm not particularly organized this morning. But yeah, by next Monday, this has to be done. And the sooner this mess ends, she says, the better, and I have to agree with that. The Platner campaign represented an electoral insurgency against the Democratic Party. Now there are going to be furious recriminations against those who launched it. There is plenty of blame to go around. Most at fault, of course, is Platner himself. He allegedly victimized Rasico, and then his campaign victimized her again, putting her into a situation where she felt she had to go public. He betrayed his supporters by plunging into a campaign while knowing he had a closet full of skeletons. True.
Hi, Kagro in the Morning listeners. This is Rebecca Romans, longtime listener and longtime supporter of the show. Do you love your non-corporatized, completely independent, commercial-free Kagro in the Morning show? Do you stand out among the crowd at the office water cooler when discussing current events because of all the up-to-the-minute news you've been brought by David Waldman? Then it's time to give back a little. David relies on contributions from listeners like you and me to keep this show on the air. Patreon.com is among the easiest ways to make secure recurring monthly donations to support the show. Patreon.com/KagroX will bring you straight to his donation page, where you can sign up for any convenient tier you like. A mere $5 a month. You'll never miss it. Works out to about 25 cents a show. That means that David is making 12.5 cents an hour, which, by coincidence, is exactly what the GOP wants to lower the federal minimum wage to. Once again, David is ahead of the curve. If Patreon.com doesn't sound like your kind of thing, there's always PayPal, or even the Square Cash app. Any way you choose to donate, please choose to donate. And thank you on behalf of David and the rest of us listeners. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll come back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on at Roots Radio. Let's continue reading through just to, I guess purge this from our system for the time being. Michelle Goldberg dealing with the Graham Platner situation. I don't have anything else to call yet, and he hasn't yet, I don't think, officially dropped out of the race. We left off by saying, he that's a fair accusation to say Platner betrayed his supporters by plunging into a campaign while knowing he had a closet full of skeletons and drawing people who believed in him into a doomed enterprise. Yeah. I guess I could see where a person might convince themselves either that they didn't, well, in some cases, like he denies Rasico's accusations, and it may be that in his mind he believes he did nothing wrong there because they had been dating on and off and maybe has not got a clear recollection of what actually happened that night. Not an excuse. It just, that might be what's going on in his head. But I mean, gosh, there were like 10 things that blew up, and one of the more devastating interviews, I think, is with one of the consultants behind his candidacy just basically saying, yeah, we vetted him, but, meh. And this can happen with anybody, and certainly you can make accusations against people that they didn't feel like they were aware of or weren't aware of what people thought about what had actually transpired because they had a different picture in their head, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it wasn't in their head at all. But at some point, that campaign specifically arrived, some point earlier than this, arrived at a moment where they said, hey, we need to lay all cards on the table. I need you to tell me everything you know about your life that could be used or even misused against you. We need to know what's coming. And they just never seem to be able to clear the slate, And maybe that's not good. Maine Democrats were willing to overlook Platner's Totenkopf tattoo, his terrible Reddit posts, and his sexting with other women while he was married, because they felt so invigorated by him and the movement he was creating. They went out on a limb for him, and he had every reason to know it was going to be sawed off. By the way, let's see. Can I make a note to myself about some of these things? I am always reading through this and being reminded of something else, and I don't want to go too far down the other trajectory thing, but the sexting thing with other women has another angle and in another race that I wanted to bring up, and it exists so far just in certain social media circles, so you'll feel well informed when I, drop that one on you later. Anyway, also liable for this disaster are the progressive operatives who recruited Platner, and I guess here at this point, I agree that this is true. Then I also am a little concerned that Michelle may be taking the opportunity to say, progressive insurgents everywhere need to be tarred with this, and that's clearly not the case. But one specific example I'll put out there is this. AOC, I did not realize that this was the case. I wasn't monitoring what she was doing in all of this, but I guess if you had asked me a couple of days ago, well, I guess if you asked me, I would have thought, hey, this is a trick question. Is AOC endorsing Graham Platner? And plenty of people, in the establishment, and I guess she counts as part of it, a wing of it, they did. So, and he won the nomination, so maybe she did, and maybe she did do something formally. I don't know, but she doesn't have to involve herself in it. It's Maine. She's from New York. Did she endorse? Did she support him along the way? And it turns out that apparently the answer is no, she didn't. And now people are like, well, I guess that was a great play or prophetic, or maybe, others were saying, well, maybe she really saw something that other people either didn't, or lots of people did see it. And, but among the, the progressive wing and the DSA wing, she may have been alone in holding out on that. I mean, she's extraordinarily smart. And other people suggested, they were both bartenders at some point during their lives. And somebody posited that maybe AOC had, seen this type of person before and was like, yeah, I know what that's about. I don't know. I really have no idea. But I should point out that if this, I don't know if this is, I don't know. This may or may not be Michelle Goldberg's intent here, but to then turn and say, I told you all these DSA progressive weirdo or dirtbag leftists were, a danger to the party. And it's like, well, there was a split even among them about Graham Platner, and you should acknowledge that just in case. So, also liable for this disaster are the progressive operatives, and I guess we should say the in the form of the particular people who did this, who recruited Platner and were so infatuated with his identity, a gruff, handsome oysterman with social democratic politics, at least now anyway, that they failed to do their due diligence, although they maintain that they did. The Wall Street Journal reported last month that Platner's top strategist Dan Moraff, is it Moraff or Moraff? Moraff, didn't want to spring for a thorough background check, which can take weeks and cost around $20,000. I didn't know that. Moraff asked for an expedited, cheaper review to be done within days, the Journal said, which is kind of how Trump would handle it. I might add. Moraf, I don't know how you say it, who travels the country trying to recruit left-wing working-class candidates, reportedly learned about some of Platner's troubling Reddit posts but decided to charge forward anyway. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats, he told the Journal. Okay, there's something to that. He's correct about the appetite for unconventional candidates, but that is no excuse for such willful sloppiness. Before blithely assuming that voters would forgive a candidate's flaws, he had a responsibility to try to find out what those flaws were. This fiasco might seem to vindicate the establishment that Platner railed against, but Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader who wanted to stop Platner, is also partly culpable here. Schumer badly misread the Democratic electorate and tried to clear the field for his preferred candidate, Maine's 78-year-old Governor Janet Mills, leaving a vacuum that Platner filled. As Notice reported last week, Dan Kleban, Kleban, a co-founder of Maine Beer Company, had been preparing to launch a populist anti-Wall Street Senate bid last summer, but the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee tried to dissuade him. He and his campaign were left with the impression that if he ran, Democrats in Washington would make it difficult because they were holding their support for Maine Governor Janet Mills, Notice wrote. Kleban ended up delaying the start of his campaign, not getting in until Platner had already caught fire. While I'm assigning blame, and she might not be right about it, I, Michelle says, shouldn't leave out myself. Last October, when stories about Platner's tattoo and Reddit posts first broke, I went to Maine to write about him. I tried to convey what I saw, a campaign that was electrifying angry Maine voters, but I deeply regret that, impressed by Platner's political charisma, I wrote that he was, quote, nothing like the edgelord caricature, or caricature depending on your pronunciation, that I encountered online. If anything, he seems to be significantly worse. I mean, that's not part of the quote that she wrote. That's the problem. The quote ends after not the kind of edgelord caricature I encountered online. But actually, yeah. One person who tried to alert Democrats was Platner's former political director, and I did catch this story, and I think we discussed it just briefly. But Genevieve McDonald, yeah, so his former political director, and I mean, how far back can that go? He hasn't been political for all but 15 minutes. She quit when the first Platner scandals emerged and has been increasingly outspoken against him. Progressive operatives made her seem like a vindictive person eager to curry favor with Maine's political establishment. In retrospect, she looks much more like someone who took a profound professional risk to do the right thing. I can't be the only one who regrets not taking her more seriously. If there's a lesson here, it might be about the importance of listening hard to the people telling you what you don't want to hear. That's always a good lesson, I think. Many Democrats, disgusted by their party's failure to contain Donald Trump, want representatives as furious as they are, and they no longer trust their leaders to tell them who is electable. That opens space up for outsider candidates who wouldn't have had a chance a few years ago. It also makes it easier for unfit characters to escape proper vetting. Platner offered many on the left something they're desperate for, working-class aesthetics married to uncompromising lefty politics. Many progressives want to believe it was a sufficiently populist message and style they can win over voters alienated from the Democratic Party, obviating the need for ideological concessions. Platner seemed to embody this possibility, and that made a lot of people look past a lot of red flags until it was almost too late. Okay, and that's good as far as it goes in terms of addressing, the more mainstream version of those who made this mistake, whoever they may be, and whether or not they include me, and I don't really know. But, there are some outliers out there, too, who I guess kind of deserve to be called out by name. And I don't know if I did anything marking this Zaid Jalani post. And, I guess I can only do it justice by finding it and reading it, and I don't know if I can. But I'll take a look. and see if I can find it. But yeah, here we go. No, that's not it. But yeah, people were pointing out that he was that he specifically had a chance, I guess, to address the Rasico accusations, but in an earlier stage when they hadn't been developed and vetted in the Politico article that finally, spilled the story yesterday. And then he was very dismissive of that story at the time. And like a lot of these guys who then reversed themselves, the Pod Save America guy, John Favreau, who just did a 180, like, hey, all of Platner is great, and part of the reason everybody, is piling these accusations on him is because he's so great, and they just can't handle it. And then, no, he's got to get out of the race with no transition or explanation, the way at least like Michelle Goldberg has put out there. But yeah, to be on the record publicly dismissing the Rasico accusation is going to make things awkward and difficult. And what's his name? Why can't I bring his name to mind? I don't know. But then there's Ken Is it Klipstein or Klippenstein? I don't even remember anymore. And I mean, this is one of the big names in progressive circles that I just don't like to use as a source. And when I find a story that is of interest, but I see he's the one on it, I tend to want to turn away from it. And there's a couple, sources like that, and I try to kind of, at least make some minimal note of it along the way. But he's the one that had that weird take on the whole thing that, hey, the women accusing him of mistreating them before the Rasico story broke, and perhaps not to the same extent as the accusations made against him in that story. That, what was it? He used some kind of bizarro terminology like, hey, which basically was supposed to mean like, hey, real men are a little rough around the edges. Hey, what are you going to do? And he was accusing everybody who was upset about it of being, what did he use? The terminology was smooth groins or something. Like they were like Ken dolls, like sexless, genderless people, rather than, fully alive and virile men. And, that was like really troubling and a really stark accusation to be making, that anybody who was actually troubled by sexual misconduct was something less than a real true man in some way. And that got a lot of people upset, and he's going to have a long path, I hope, trying to live that one down. So yeah, that should trouble him for a long time. Okay, there's more, and there are other people involved in similar, or who similarly have some apologies to make, and likely won't. Matt Stoller, yes, right, that's true. Matt Stoller also, likewise, he was the one who put it this way last time, the last round of sexual misconduct stories, I think. But that plus the tattoo and everything else, which he dismissed all of it as Graham Platner represents the rejection of, the way he put it was, the rejection of HR lady politics in the Democratic Party. Like, oh yeah, the only people that would complain about his tattoo or, raping neighbors would be the HR department. And not only that, the HR ladies. Yeah, that should stick with them as stigma for some time. That's going to require a lot of work to rehabilitate as well. And I'm not particularly interested in necessarily. I lose nothing by not seeing either one of them rehabilitated, to tell you the truth, or all three of them. So I'm not particularly anxious to see it happen. If it happens, great, I guess. But anyway, we just had to put that one out there. All right, and that's enough about Graham Platner. We're going to go back to the situation, I'm sure, tomorrow. Plenty of other things to share with you. can we get back to the one about the guy that everybody doesn't like, Donald Trump? Sure, we can. And I wanted to ask, I'll read this story. Scott sent this one to me, and I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Donald Trump, and we've all talked about Donald Trump and his dementia and the various signs of his dementia. And I'm not a dementia expert or anything like that, although I'm getting to be, but that's my problem. But is kleptomania or something like it a sign of advancing dementia as well? I mean, that, of course, in combination with, various weird paranoid accusations that other people have stolen things from you, particularly if if you're somehow unconsciously, registering that you may have lost this thing, but rather than admit that you're, losing your memory and can't remember where you put it, you just accuse other people of stealing things. But I think it then develops into a general paranoia. You find people hiding money under their mattresses or whatever, or burying it in coffee cans in the backyard if they're still living at home, but kleptomania too. And some of it has practical kleptomania, stealing sugar packets from restaurants, bread, rolls, crackers, what have you. But sometimes it develops into something much worse. And I mean, since Donald Trump was something of a kleptomaniac anyway, you'd think it would rise to a higher level, and I guess it has. I'll remind you what I'm thinking of as I'm reading you this story. This is from The Mirror, the U.S. version of The Mirror, which is one of the British tabloids, I guess, reproduced here in the MSN network here, where a lot of news crosses Scott's desk and it comes to me in that form. Trump refuses to return NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, refuses to return stock exchange bell. Like, I didn't even know you could take that bell, but I guess he did, just days after pocketing ribbon-cutting scissors. Now, again, you have to stack this up along with, since we began this show talking about the FIFA World Cup, you will recall that at the medal and trophy ceremony for the FIFA Club World Cup, right, where all the top clubs from around the world played one another. Very interesting competition, by the way. I have to pay more attention to that one next time, but they don't put it on TV as easily as the actual World Cup. But anyway, they had the medal ceremony and the trophy, and remember, he was just like admiring all the shiny golden things, and he swiped the trophy, like, what's his name? Gianni Infantino made a visit to the White House. I guess we hosted that too. Maybe the host countries get to host both. I don't know. Anyway, he brought the trophy to show Trump, look, this golden thing. You like golden things. Look at this. This is the beautiful trophy we've commissioned to give to the winner, and these are the medals we'll be awarding them. And he kept it. He held it and cradled it and caressed it and fondled it in various ways, and then just didn't give it back much. And everybody made comparisons to Putin and the Super Bowl ring. Who did that? Was it Robert Kraft that showed him the Super Bowl ring? And anyway, and he just kept it, and he was like, what are you going to do? You going to fight me to take it back? Well, then Trump did this with the trophy, and they had to make a replica trophy to give to the actual winners, like really quick. And then they said, don't worry, we'll get you a real one with like actual precious metal and everything very soon. And then he kept the set of the medals as well, and he put it around his own neck. He's just a weirdo kleptomaniac. Well, it's, I guess, getting worse. Alana or Elena, I don't know. Loftus is the reporter for this. It's a British tabloid. Could be Alana. I don't know. Anyway, here's the story. President Donald Trump said, don't believe it, but he said he will not give back, he just says it, the New York Stock Exchange bell during a bizarre moment on Monday. I mean, that is a bizarre moment. I didn't even realize, is that removable? Do they give you your own cool one? And it wasn't Monday. Was he in New York? I don't think so. So maybe he had an event in the Oval Office yesterday with a bunch of assorted weirdos and nut jobs, and there was one very bizarre-looking group of people behind him for this. And he was, I guess, launching the Trump accounts, as they call them, which is supposedly, I guess, for children born after January 2025, when he took office. There's some program on where you get a dedicated savings account that can be set aside for kids, and the federal government will contribute, I guess maybe match contributions to it up to $1,000. And it's already warping into well, how about if we give you stock that's equivalent to $1,000? Well, how about if you just give me the $1,000 and shut up? But it's all sorts of problems with the idea. But he was launching it anyway because he's Donald Trump. And I don't know, some corporate sponsors of the thing were behind him. And he was already getting to, I think yesterday he floated that we could give you X stock, XAI stock. And I'm sure Elon Musk would be fine with that. He didn't even ask Elon Musk, can I give away your stock? Anyway, he's launching this thing, and maybe the New York Stock Exchange brought him, because it had to do with stocks, and I guess it was the first day of public, they say in here, first day of public trading having to do with the accounts. I don't even know how that works, but maybe they said for the president to make this announcement, we'll bring the bell and we'll have him ring it in Washington, and all the people in New York can listen to it by Zoom and start trading. I don't know. So they brought him a replica bell, and I guess he was like, you're not leaving here with the bell. I'm keeping it. So here's the bizarre moment. The president rang the bell of the New York Stock Exchange from the White House to mark the first trading day for Trump accounts. But maybe they brought the real bell because he's the president. I want you to bring the real one, and then I'm going to steal it. All right. So this is to mark the first trading day for Trump accounts. I'm not even certain what that means specifically, but there's a link. You can read it. A government initiative that provides children later with a $1,000 investment account. Apparently, you can't access it until you're 18, so he's really not giving it to children, but you get the idea. Leaders from both the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ visited the Oval Office. That's the weird collection of people. Okay. As the first joint opening of the exchanges took place. I didn't even realize that was a thing, too. All right. So the first joint opening of the two exchanges, and he steals the bell. However, Trump threw many people off after making a strange comment about stealing the bell. He just says he's going to do it. Stealing the bell and refusing to give it back. It comes as Trump's, quote, repulsive moment, and all Trump moments are repulsive moments, but I guess he used the word repulsive in speaking about somebody in his North Dakota speech. And apparently it was so bizarre and troubling the way he did this that it has sparked new concerns about his health issues. All right. So that seems pretty interesting. There's the opening, I guess is what he says. There's the opening bell right there. And I said, it's so beautiful, I'm not going to give it back, Trump said, speaking at the podium. I don't know if it's supposed to go back, but they're going to have to fight like hell to get it back. We're not giving it back. Do you understand that, Scott? Don't let it leave. He's talking to Scott Bessent in this, believe it or not. So I want to say, Secretary of the Treasury, you're my accomplice in this theft. The moment, though bizarre, was not entirely out of character for the president, who often makes jokes that fail to land. But it's not a joke, I guess, if he actually keeps the bell. However, some social media users pointed out that his attempt to hold on to something that doesn't belong to him seems to be part of an emerging pattern. Here is an ASIN tweet about that. He quotes him on this, and and that's it. So I guess you get to see the video. Will it play? I mean, it's on the wrong computer, but if I turn up the sound.
Earlier this morning, many of you joined me in the Oval Office for the ringing of the opening bell.
Can you hear that?
Something happened that was incredible. Never happened before. We had the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, the top of both. These are great people, but they never did a bell and opening together. This is the first time. And there's the bell right there. And I said, it's so beautiful. I'm not giving it back. I don't know if it's supposed to go back, but they're going to have to fight like hell to get it back. We're not giving it back. Do you understand that, Scott? Don't let it leave. It's so beautiful. But
it's just
that's
a bell.
The bell we rang. And that's where the New York Stock Exchange and
It's a nice
came
bell.
together, the leadership.
They just panned out. I don't know whether the sound quality is enough for me to keep boring you with this thing. It's a very nice bell, and it certainly looks like something, it wouldn't be out of keeping to gift something like that to the president. But, I wonder whether they had to clear that. I'm sure that the people who went there are, in charge of the exchange there. And if they say, I want you to make it possible for me to bring this bell with me to Washington, they'll do it. But did anybody there say, can we send you with a backup bell or a replica bell? Because there's some chance that if we send you with the real bell, we're not getting that back here today. So now I guess the question is, what bell did they ring to open the session today? And I don't know. It's a good question. I don't recall this being the bell in other openings. I don't know. I guess I recall them. I don't know. I never really examined it all that closely, but I guess that's really it. But there's the ASIN tweet, interesting as it is, and giving us a chance to listen to the audio. I hope it played well, and if not, I'll include it in there. Well, this article will be in the roundup, and you can go and listen to it, but maybe you've already heard it. The ASIN tweet doesn't actually do what the write-up says it's going to do. Some social media users pointed out that his attempt to hold on to something that doesn't belong to him seems to be part of an emerging pattern, and then we just see him keeping the bell. Where's the pattern? I guess it's coming up. Just a few days prior, as he cut the ribbon during the dedication of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library in Medora, North Dakota, Trump was spotted slipping a pair of gold ceremonial scissors into his suit pocket. Again, not offered to him, and it wouldn't be out of keeping to offer them to him, but he doesn't wait for that, and really just slipping it into his pocket. And I guess that's why he endorses Ken Paxton, who is also a shoplifter. And, just bizarre, weird hoarding behavior. It's not that he's hoarding things that are strange or you have no idea why he would want to keep them. I'd want to keep them, but I also would feel like of all the people in the world who could be, shoplifting these gold scissors, I'm the most likely to get caught because I'm being videotaped at all times. He just doesn't, understand what being caught means. So I guess that's an issue. While the action may have been completely innocent, come on. Many identified it as another example of Trump's strange behavior over the past few months. A medical expert who specializes in neurological rehabilitation weighed in on the video clip. We'll read about that after this. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And by the way, production staff, if you'd like to continue the conversation, everybody loves hearing from you. So you're absolutely welcome to do so. But I didn't want to leave everybody else hanging while the music ended. But yeah, we were having a little bit of discussion in the background here about this particular story, and it probably deserves to be said. Like I said, I don't know about whether I recall stuff that I casually absorbed somewhere along the way about kleptomania being a sign of advancing dementia. I feel like I've read that somewhere before, but I'm not certain. But in Trump's particular case, pointing out, he's always been a thief. He steals things all the time. He didn't need to have dementia to do this. But I think that it's possible that advancing dementia has made it more frequent with him. Like, he's certainly stolen piles of money before, but, he does that by pen and by lawyer usually, but just stealing physical objects. He's certainly a collector and a hoarder of memorabilia. That's a thing for him too. I mean, I don't know, like what, signed football helmets that he has all over the place, and sports memorabilia, memorabilia of himself all over the place as well. But he does tend to keep those things. And of course, any shiny object. And I would guess he probably feels entitled to some of these things, and it's only been exacerbated by occupying the presidency, where they sometimes actually give you these things. And by the way, I mentioned somewhere along the line the Super Bowl ring that Putin pilfered, I think, from Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. And I'm reminded that Trump just recently, I don't know if I set this aside somewhere, but Trump just recently got another giant, bribe gift thing, a ring with the presidential seal on it, and he loves that, of course, but it's a giant, chunky gold ring with like hundreds of, they had the numbers, 300 diamonds in it and rubies and, all the other various precious stones gifted to him by jewelers from, of all places, at this particular moment, from Belgium. Why did they do that? Who are they? Who are these people? So the jewelers, a diamond dealing group, got a tariff break of some kind. Remember when he was in his tariff phase? And 5 million% tariff on diamonds from Europe because I hate Europe because they're so filthy and disgusting. Whatever it is that he's saying. And they lobbied him and said, we'd really rather make more money from dealing diamonds internationally than this tariff allows us to do. And it's super important that we be able to get the diamonds there for people because, if they don't have them, what will they wear on their fingers while they do all the other things that they actually need to do to survive? Oh, I don't know. That's a good point. And so he lowered their tariff. I don't know if it was specifically for Belgium or what, but the Belgian jewelers, and there's a thriving diamond trade in Belgium, they decided to thank him for this help in changing the tariffs with a gigantic, as they was described as a watch-sized ring. So you can't really wear it. And of course, I don't know, it would overwhelm his hands and maybe break fingers off or set him bleeding again. But anyway, they gave him this really super garish, ugly ass thing. And I think I saw Waldo Jackwith saying he doesn't even realize they're mocking him with the design of this ring. It's so over the top Trump that, he wouldn't recognize it. And so it's just a giant violation of the emoluments clause as usual, which, who cares about that? That's only in the Constitution. That's not a real thing. And so in addition to taking that bribe, accepting that emolument, it comes, of all people to take it from at this particular moment, from the Belgians. I feel like a Monty Python sketch here. But yeah, so it's about as un-American as you could think. And as he's cheating to, try to, or not. By the way, I heard a better explanation for the reinstatement of the eligibility of Balogun, Flo Balogun, the American forward who played in the losing effort, unfortunately, last night, that actually made it sound like, well, maybe there was a legit thing going on here. But of course, having Donald Trump involved with it made it feel like not a legit thing. But to be taking, garish gifts from the Belgians at this particular moment seems odd. But I'm sorry, that's a digression from stealing the bell from the New York Stock Exchange. So where were we? Oh, yes, the medical expert who specializes in neurological rehabilitation, of which there will be none for Donald Trump, weighed in on the video clip which circulated on X on Thursday night. Pathological liar Donald Trump, but it's pathologist Hillary Shea wrote alongside that video, it seems like Donald Trump has become a little bit of a kleptomaniac recently, but maybe it's not that recent, as we were pointing out. But quite honestly, it looks more like a sign of dementia. Yeah, all right then. Hillary Shea says, she's so smart. Hillary Shea says what I said. Anyway, I do think that there's some sort of relationship between... but although when it's a dementia sign, it's very often that they're stealing things that don't make any particular sense to steal. Like I said, when there's practical thievery going on, like sugar packets or whatever, like I use those sugar packets in my hand. I'm not saying I do, but mayonnaise packets, that's another thing. When we were traveling, we needed little portable packets of condiments. We got a little dementia. during the trip occasionally. But, we were paying our restaurant bills. Trump wouldn't. Anyway, you steal things that make some practical sense. Like, I can't, these are things that I spend money on, and if I can take them from the restaurant kind of quote unquote for free, that's not dementia. That's actually kind of maybe good thinking. Not good, but I understand practical thinking. But if you're stealing things that make no sense, like garden shears, what? You don't garden. No, but, I don't know. They were shiny. They were there. There was something of value. I took it. Or, little knobs or doodads or decorations that you don't actually put up anywhere. That would maybe raise those kinds of flags. And, they don't make any particular sense. For Trump, shiny golden scissors, for him, I wanted them in my desk. I have a pair of scissors in my desk, but they're not gold. These are gold. And, of course, this is a madness of King George problem, I guess, in a way, right? Like if you bring your average dementia patient in and say, well, we love you anyway, and we want you to cut the ribbon on this thing because back in the day you were involved in XYZ and it's important that you help open this thing. And they cut and they keep the scissors. You might say, no. By the way, for dementia patients with advanced dementia, just don't give them scissors. Like that's probably a bad idea all by itself, gold or otherwise. But they might think, oh, well, these are for me to keep. And then you say no. And they still understand in their mind, I'm just a regular person. If they say they own them and I don't, fine. But with Trump, like madness of King George, how do you convince the president of the United States that you didn't intend to just give him this giant gold-plated expensive object when so many other people have been giving him giant gold-plated expensive objects because of who he is and the office he holds? And then it becomes impossible to convince him that he's got delusions of grandeur, just as in the madness of King George, right? The psychologist, or the proto-psychologist, because they didn't have psychology then, but the doctor is saying, I've got a number of patients who are crazy. They think they're the king of England, but this guy is the king of England. What am I going to do? All right. Well, anyway, a user on X seems to have had the same realization about the dementia and the kleptomania, writing alongside Trump's strange rant about the NYSE bell. Dementia patients are known to steal things. Last week it was scissors. Today it's a bell. There's really no mention of the FIFA Club Cup trophy. Furthermore, a recently published tell-all book by New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan described the president claiming decor items that Melania had selected for shared spaces and quietly moving them to his own bedroom or the Oval Office. That's nice that he appreciates what Melania is buying. The stealing is usually a symptom of changes in the brain affecting memory, judgment, impulse control, or the ability to recognize ownership, Shea said. Oh, but that's a theme for us, right? How many times? Not enough. And it's been a while since I said that Trump has always had real difficulty distinguishing between personal property and public property, or where the lines exist and what things are his and what aren't. I mean, even up to and including what you might just say are rhetorical devices when he talks about my generals or my this or that, and you're talking about people, for one thing. Not only just people, but public figures, public officials, my generals, my attorney general, my Supreme Court. Anyway, Shea continues here. I do not think that Donald Trump is actually, psychiatrically speaking, suffering from kleptomania. Okay, but I do believe it is just one more sign and symptom of dementia. As always, Donald Trump has got to go. It comes after Eric Trump finally shared the 7 words that, what is this? Barron whispered into Joe Biden's ear? What is that even doing in here? Is this, I guess, the end of the article? And sometimes it's difficult. Occasionally they insert blurbs to promote some other article, and I recognize them as having been set apart by bullet points earlier in the article. This one has no bullet point, but Eric Trump finally shared the 7 words that Barron whispered into Joe Biden's ear. 1, I never realized that he did such a thing. And 2, is it related to this? I mean, I don't know what the 7 words are. I guess we could go find out. But is it like, my dad My dad is a kleptomaniac. How many words is that? My dad is a kleptomaniac. That's only 5. My dad is a mother effing kleptomaniac. Is that 6 or 7 words? That's hyphenated. I don't know. Help, my dad is... Okay, I can turn it into 7. What are Eric Trump's 7 words? Or the Baron whispered in Joe Biden's ear, and why is he whispering anything to him? Eric Trump shared... When is this from? November of 2025. Why is this... I'm curious now, why is this related? We're going down the rabbit hole. Let's go. It's another Mirror article. You know how it is. Eric Trump finally shares these words. Eric Trump shared the details of what his youngest sibling, Barron Trump, said to former President Joe Biden last January. And it is not what people expected. Well, I wouldn't have expected him to say his dad was a kleptomaniac. Eric Trump, okay, enough with the restating this situation here. The second eldest Trump brother, sat down for an interview with Megyn Kelly recently and proudly accepted the title of the, quote, nicest Trump, which, I mean, his younger sibling is the topic of conversation. Wouldn't even give it to him, but maybe Barron's just not nice. The crypto enthusiast, that's one way of describing him, that's Eric, playfully went through the members of his famous family, ranking them based on their politeness, calling his older brother Donald Jr. a jerk. I'm with you on that one. Would you like to run for Senate in Maine? When asked about the youngest Trump, Barron, Eric was quick to explain that his younger brother is quiet but very polite, even extending his best wishes to his father's biggest rival. Eric admitted, Barron's the quietest Trump. We don't know him as well, Kelly pointed out. He's a little shy. Barron's smart as hell. He then highlighted the controversy between his little brother and his father's at their father's inauguration in January of 2025. It comes after another link to another dumb story that we don't know about. It comes after the daughter of Donald Trump's doctor, made a worrying claim about his health as fears grow for the president. Anyway, what did he say? Lip reading experts couldn't figure it out, but according to Eric, he said, I call Barron. I go, buddy, what did you actually say? It was something so polite I almost wouldn't get it right. It was something like, congratulations and best of luck to you. Something very respectful. Okay, that's nice. This has been a waste of time. Except, what did they do? Why did they insert this into the story? I have no idea, but I think it was just clickbait, and I guess it worked. All right, ignore the last 2 minutes of the show. That didn't make any sense whatsoever. Let's veer back into other things and see if we can find something maybe a little bit more relevant. What notes have I given to myself here? I got the Ring story out there. Oh, yeah, there was a note. Why were we thinking about this? This was when we were reading about Graham Platner. Oh, right, sexting other women while he was married. And then that made me think of Ken Paxton, not because he's also a kleptomaniac and shoplifter, but because he recently was photographed taking off for the July 4th weekend, which, as a Senate candidate, an American, you should be spending here in America or celebrating America in some spectacular fashion. Although it must be said, he was on his way to Iceland, which was prior to July 4th, so he doesn't have my excuse. I went to Iceland last time on July 4th, not because I hate America, but specifically because we thought, all right, we're making a trip to Iceland anyway, and the thinking was, wouldn't it be cool to be flying in a plane at night over the East Coast at 9:30 p.m. on July 4th? You would be able to see the fireworks going all over the East Coast. And, that's a thing for us. Like I said, we always go up to the highest point in town, always. Recently, last couple of years, and look at all the fireworks from all the surrounding towns, and wouldn't it be cool to see from the air? We live pretty close to Dulles Airport, so that, it's been a thing for us. But not Ken Paxton. He was actually flying out of town to Iceland, but he was going like July 2nd, July 3rd, so he wasn't even going to get the benefit of flying during July 4th. And when I went with my family, see, and when he went with some chick is not his wife. He's in the middle of a divorce, so he wasn't likely to take his wife with him. But anyway, he's going with his somebody. I guess everybody has to now theorize is his girlfriend or one of many. I don't know how many he might have, shoplifted along the way. And, if you're running for Senate, that's not the thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I think Republicans were looking for a way to try to hit back on that somehow and accuse a Democratic senator or Senate candidate or both, because they're incumbent running for re-election, of something similar. And where did I see that this morning? Of course, it was on Blue Sky. And there we go. It was, whose account? Olga Nestorova, who I think we've called out her name before, from One Street Press, I guess, One ST Press. Is it Street at the ST? Anyway, she's, or is it Honest? That could be it, because it looks like One Street, but it's all mashed together in one word. But then there's a graphic up here, Honest. Is that something in Russian and or Ukrainian that we don't know the meaning of? Because she's following a lot of those stories all the time too. Anyway, could be Honest. Anyway, Olga pulls this screen cap from the Twitter side of things. Laura Loomer, crazy Laura Loomer. It's funny too that she puts eyes emojis in this thing, and for somebody with such crazy eyes, that's actually kind of funny. Laura Loomer grabbed a photo circulated online, presumably, of Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, at a watch party, maybe for the Mexico game. Was that Mexico, England? Yeah. And he's rooting for the neighbor in this, Mexico, and co-host. Fair enough, especially there in Arizona. Looks like a large crowd of Mexico supporters are there. Can't tell if there's any England supporters in the background. But anyway, he's up there taking a selfie with the crowd in the background. And next to him, all I can say and still preserve the joke here, next to him there's a woman there also in a Mexico jersey. He's wearing a baseball cap. She's wearing a baseball cap. Angle of the selfie makes it difficult to see her face in its entirety. But Laura Loomer says, hey, who is this woman that Arizona Democrat Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat Senator Mark Kelly, was getting handsy with yesterday while he was, and ... I don't see the rest of the tweet. It doesn't even matter, because you'll never guess who this woman was with whom he was getting handsy. Don't say Laura Loomer. That's not the answer. This is a blonde woman. The answer, though, is his blonde wife, Gabrielle Giffords, who responds to Laura, well, she looks pretty great to me, and then sends an extra copy of that, tagging the personal account of Mark Kelly, Captain Mark Kelly, as opposed to the Senator Mark Kelly. But you get the idea. Yeah, the woman he's getting handsy with. He's got his arm around her back to get closer while they're taking the photo. But I guess I didn't recognize her right off the bat. There's a hat over one of her eyes, and she's not wearing the glasses she's very frequently seen with in her photograph. And, Laura Loomer's quite dumb and very accusatory, and there you go. So, who's he getting handsy with? His wife. No wonder you didn't understand what was going on. It was a photo of a Democratic senator with a woman very close by, and guess what? They're a married couple. Whereas, if you get such a picture with a Republican candidate, golly, not his wife. Just pointing that out. But hey, who am I to get judgmental about these things? Anyhow, speaking of other weirdo Republican lunatics, this is an interesting angle I wasn't expecting. We'll move right over to the actual lunatic. Anna Paulina Luna is the subject of this story. Let's open this up. I got to have notes to get everybody links to all these other ones I'm going to here. Luna calls for Patriot Front investigation after D.C. rally. Oh, my God. Has Anna Paulina Luna lost her mind? Is she What's she doing? Investigating neo-Nazis marching in Washington, D.C. Well, don't get too excited, because the truth is she's probably looking to call an investigation and use that as a platform to formalize the Republican accusation that Patriot Front marchers seen in the Capitol on July 4th are in fact Antifa in disguise trying to make conservatives look bad. And now she's going to waste congressional investigative time doing this. But, who knows? The whole thing could backfire on her and maybe result in something super embarrassing for the Republicans, because they're very dumb and they're terrible at doing this. Ashley Fields reported the story. Luna on Monday called for an investigation into the Patriot Front white nationalist group after its Independence Day rally and march across Washington, D.C. What I find odd about Patriot Front is how under Biden they were never investigated. Well-funded, never investigated, Luna wrote in a post on the social platform X, which, I don't know that that's really the case. I know that I think it was under Biden that they were arrested driving themselves around in the back of U-Haul vans. Biden didn't conduct the arrest. It wasn't a federal issue. It was a local police issue. But what was he going to investigate? I'm not really sure. But I guess, again, this is part of a build towards an accusation that they're fake, they're really Antifa, and the reason Biden didn't investigate them is that he knew that they were Antifa. And if he had known that they were really fascists, then surely he would have investigated them, because obviously you investigate your political enemies in this country. But no, the normal practice is not to do that. FBI under Biden looked into Catholics instead. Now, again, also an odd accusation. Biden, rather famously, an active Catholic himself. So, and what does it mean? He looked into Catholics. He went to church. I know that. Is that looking into Catholics? FBI under Biden looked into Catholics and said, so looks like GOP oversight, the government oversight committee in the House, should do some digging, she added, referring to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Luna's push for a probe follows Patriot Front's 400-person march throughout the nation's capital on Saturday. Many of the people in the march were masked and uniformed, although also uninformed, if you want to add an extra N to that. And some were carrying the American flag upside down, and then some were carrying Confederate flags and maybe some other stuff as well. The group is known for its flash demonstrations. That is to say, I guess that's what's supposed to explain why they're only there for 10 minutes before they get beat up. But flash demonstrations. It's not them flashing, thank God. It's them just showing up really quickly and then leaving. Making it one of the United States' most visible, white supremacist groups, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Although, I don't know if they have a good handle on anything over there anymore. On Sunday, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum said he doesn't agree with what Patriot Front stands for, but he defended the group's First Amendment right to free speech. And apparently they do still have that. That part of the Constitution they haven't erased for themselves yet, anyway, though they erase it for everyone else. But keep in mind, by the way, Anna Paulina Luna wants to do a congressional investigation on all of this, and Doug Burgum doesn't agree with them. She probably would say she doesn't agree either, but reminder, good working theory here. How can they produce people in the back of pickup truck or back of U-Haul trucks in, was it Idaho where they were arrested? And it also be able to produce 400 people for a flash, 10-minute demonstration in D.C. And the working theory is they live here, and that's because a lot of them, maybe they started out in Idaho, but now they've landed jobs on Capitol Hill working for Republicans who are professionally interested in pretending they don't know that their staffers are all white supremacists. Doug Burgum, exemplifying that, and he's probably got a couple in his office. Anna Paulina Luna may also. On CNN's State of the Union, Burgum told host Dana Bash a number of dumb things, but this one was, certainly what they stand for is nothing that I could possibly agree with, but one of the foundational principles of the United States which makes democracy messy is free speech, and there are plenty of things that I see that I might personally find offensive, reprehensible, but in America free speech is allowed, and this is by the whole spectrum of things. By the whole spectrum? Okay. True. Actual American foundational belief, but, were Trump to say, I don't care, arrest them all, because, if he's pointing at Democrats, Burgum would have nothing to say. I mean, you should believe that right off the bat. He did not commit to advising President Trump to condemn the organization or the demonstration. Later on the show, Representative Buddy Carter from Georgia strongly rebuked the group's actions. What I'll say is that this is not the soul of America. Look, we are all created equally. That is what our whole impetus is based on here in this country, Carter told Bash. And I would just not ignore it, but I don't pay that much credence to it because that does not represent the soul of America. We in America believe in equality, and that is simply not reflective, certainly not of the Republican Party, he added. Okay, and of course he wanted to get the Republican Party off the hook. You'll find any number, I'm sure, of examples of Buddy Carter and people like him saying, if they can find one random person expressing a leftist idea, every Democrat has to disavow that idea. But, we're going to ignore it because it doesn't represent the Republican Party. I'm actually more interested in what Luna had to say. And you know something? They shouldn't have run this article. We're almost at the end, and there's not a single mention of Luna yet to come. So I don't know what she thinks she's going to investigate.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, so I'm a little disappointed in the piece from The Hill. I guess I'm not surprised terribly when try and generate a story about just about anything. And they went with this headline of Luna calls for Patriot Front investigation after D.C. rally, and I guess she did. But the bulk of the piece is really just various Republicans disavowing in some way, or just not even getting to disavowing, just saying, well, I certainly don't agree with the Patriot Front, but what are you going to do? But nothing about exactly, in depth, nothing about why Anna Paulina Luna is trying to investigate. It doesn't really make any particular sense. That she finds it odd that Biden never investigated them, but they kind of did. And what were they going to investigate them for? It is a free speech issue, what they do. And, I find it odd that Republicans don't honor that when they're investigating their enemies, but it's weird that they think it's weird that Democrats don't do the same, but I guess that maybe that's some projection. But I think it would be interesting to do that investigation, and I assume they'll begin doing it by allowing Democrats to actually participate in these hearings and the investigation. It would be interesting for Democrats to use that opportunity to raise the questions raised in the thread we discussed yesterday about whether or not, in fact, you'll find, if you look at it, that a large number of the Patriot Front protesters are employed by Republicans on the Hill and in the administration. That would be the end of those hearings pretty quickly. If you want to wrap it up quick, start bringing that up. And if you really wanted to investigate, like they would say, psh, that's a lie. How dare you? Do you have any proof of these accusations? I don't know if we do. I could reread that article and see whether he levels any. And I don't think he goes quite that far. But I do remind you, as weird as it was, they were all taking the metro to the protest. And, given that they usually, I guess, go places in the back of a U-Haul van, this was interesting to note. But the metro is access controlled, and to get on and get off, you got to have a fare card. And if they are Capitol Hill staffers and Washington, D.C. residents, there's a pretty good likelihood that they have a permanent refillable, I guess you might say, fare card, and you just keep adding money to it with credit cards, or you can do it with cash at the machines, the kiosks in the metro station. So at a minimum, they all had to have fare cards. Of course, you can buy, one-time or temporary fare cards, or even day passes if you're in from out of town or whatever. But, most people not carrying that much cash these days, and will probably do that transaction with credit card. If you wanted to do a serious actual investigation into who those people were, that they all got on at the Eastern Market Metro at a certain time on July 4th, pull the records. Whose cards were read by the scanners? Whose credit cards were used to buy fare cards or add fares? I don't know if there's personally identifiable. You would think that when they designed the system, they might have attempted, for privacy reasons, to privatize that data, but I'll bet it's there for investigative purposes when they need to. If the FBI is looking for somebody and tracking his movements, you can bet that they'll produce that information from the turnstiles, which aren't turnstiles, but lack of any other terminology for them, and the credit card readers there too. You could identify those people, and you'll find out that they're mostly your staffers, or you'll find out who they are anyway if you want to investigate them. At a minimum, you'll want to know their names so you can out them as Antifa super soldiers, right? But I believe that investigation would be drawn to a close pretty quickly. But I wouldn't mind getting a hold of that information and seeing who's who. And if they're Antifa super soldiers, I'd like to get a list of them too and have them all subscribe to the show. So, that couldn't hurt. Anyway, I don't know whether they have any money, but we'll find out. They have less now. They spent it on their Metro cards and ugly khakis. So, moving right along, there's more to add. I thought this might make for interesting reading, but will it take too long? That's the question. We're so behind on so many things. Let's put a couple of stories on the record here that need attention. This one doesn't look like it's going to take us all that long, but we should get it on the record and do it now. NBC News running the headline just the other day, July 2nd, into last week. Trump discloses 327, previously unreported stock trades. President should be doing any kind of stock trades, but he's doing hundreds of them, thousands of them. This 327 of them that weren't in the previous disclosure for some reason. Why are we interested in them? They were made one day before his first tariff pause. And of course, everybody believed that was market manipulation. Probably not at the time. The first tariff pause, maybe. People just thought it was taco. But remember that the people who came up with taco as a slogan, as a buzzword, were Wall Street types doing their own betting on what was going to happen with tariffs. And they identified the pattern pretty early on. And then it became pretty obvious, at least finally to those of us watching, I guess it became clear that this was all stock manipulation at the point where the tacoing was about the Iran war. But I think there were plenty of people floating that theory during the tariff stuff too. And now I guess there's just that much more forensic evidence for it. This disclosure, made more than 14 months after the purchases occurred, is the latest revelation to fuel calls for greater scrutiny of the president's financial assets. And I mean, come on, we've been calling for greater scrutiny of his assets as president since 2017, but greater scrutiny of his assets in general since 1982. So, or hell, 1973, when they were his dad's assets and he was involved in using them to power a giant racial discrimination machine. Anyway, so there's news about that. But, this is one of those ones that I have to subscribe to read. which I forgot that NBC News was doing that, and I wonder whether, now I've tapped the wrong button. I wonder whether we might be able to have a look anyway at, does this plug-in that I used do anything? It doesn't. But hang on, I don't know, I'm somewhat interested in getting the story, so we'll do our best with trying to get this out of the way. Oh, there's some surprising news from my Firefox start page. Party Rock Anthem singer Lauren Bennett. I think I know that song, Party Rock Anthem. Anyway, dead at age 37. That's a little bit unexpected. I don't know that that's going to be like an earth-shattering piece of news for our demographic, but we'll throw it in there, and I'll open the story just because, I don't know, I think everybody kind of knows that song in passing. Party Rock is in the house tonight. Is that the song I'm thinking of? I don't know. There could be any number of Party Rock anthems. But okay, that was unexpected news. But what I wanted to do was go to the NBC story. And that was, we had a paywall in the way of that one. And hold on, let me go pay NBC so that I can get access to this article. Sure. Here I go. Here's a bunch of money. And now, let's see if we can read the article. Not yet. I guess they want me to pay them more money. Hold on. We're working on it. What if we pay them in Bitcoin? Will that work? Let's see. Hey, it worked. Okay. Yay, Bitcoin. Everybody go buy some. Steve Kopak and Gabe Gutierrez getting paid in Bitcoin for this story. Investment accounts owned by President Donald Trump engaged in more than 300 previously undisclosed stock purchases. And remember, there were thousands that were disclosed. On April 8th, 2025, one day ahead of his surprise announcement, that he would pause a number of his, quote, Liberation Day tariffs, according to Trump's annual financial disclosure report. And speaking of that, as I was doing his voice, I want to remember to boost the sound for the clip that I played of him on my laptop computer, or maybe substitute better audio for it if we can in the upstairs editing booth. So, despite a 45-day deadline to report financial transactions, none of the 327 stock purchases on April 8th had been disclosed before Tuesday. Oh no. Instead, the trades are scattered throughout a spreadsheet-style document that runs more than 900 pages, dwarfing the disclosure reports of Trump's predecessors. And I think I did see somebody do a data visualization on that one. Previous president's number of stock trades while in office. But they did bar graph, which was funny, of course, because it was every other previous president. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 10,000. Donald Trump. Even if it was just these 327, the bar graph would have looked ridiculous. Anyway, those purchases represented just a fraction of the stock trading that the president's accounts have engaged in since he returned to office, but their disclosure more than 14 months after they occurred is the latest in a cascade of revelations about the president's personal assets and the ones that he steals from other people. Taken together are fueling calls from both Republicans and Democrats for greater scrutiny of his financial interests. Asked by NBC News about these filings and who exactly was handling Trump's investments, the White House referred to a post on social media site X from Eric Trump, the official spokesperson, I guess, which says in part, quote, neither President Trump, his family, nor the Trump Organization has any role in selecting, directing, approving, influencing, or soliciting specific investments. They receive no advance notice of trades, cannot alter or override the manager's strategies or models, and provide no input regarding investment decisions or portfolio operations. And everybody kind of knows right off the bat that that's bullshit. Thank you, Greg. That's got to be. If it was true, then they're not genius investors. So they don't even want that to be true, for one thing. And for another, like, we have nothing to do with it. We didn't do any of that. I just called FIFA and I changed the outcome of the soccer. So, yeah, he's not a one to let things slip through his fingers and out of his control. They're very short fingers, and one of them has the giant, ugly ring on it. And, also, he's constantly bleeding out of them. But he doesn't let them escape his grasp. Let's see. Eric Trump continued, and he said some more lies about whether or not they control their own investments. The president has consistently denied that his private sector ventures pose a conflict of interest with his role as president, even as he and his family have plunged into a wide variety of businesses that have reaped billions of dollars in returns for them. So, it's a lie. What can I tell you? He denies that there's a conflict of interest, but one, he doesn't understand conflict of interest law or rules or norms. Two, he wouldn't care even if he did. And three, he's just lying about what's going on. So the statement is useless. But there it is, and I guess you could hang him for perjury later. Stock trading by politicians has become a particular focus of concerns about corruption in recent years, with some on both sides of the aisle offering support for laws banning or limiting trades by elected officials. And while the topic has been percolating now for years, Trump's trades and their circumstances have brought fresh focus to the issue. Don Fox, the former acting director, director and general counsel of the Office of Government Ethics, said the stock trades are, quote, completely unprecedented. That accounts for the graph 10,000. Tuesday's disclosure contained a number of stock trades that were not previously reported, which is a problem all by itself, in prior disclosures, and a small footnote which read, the filer paid late filing fees related to transactions not previously reported on 278Ts. I guess that's the name of the form. That form, according to the Office of Government Ethics website, is used by employees within the executive branch who must file public periodic transaction reports. And by the way, employees within the executive branch. Wasn't it the case that way back in the beginning, in 2017, when the General Services Administration, or was it one of the other, I can't remember which of the government operations offices handled the lease of the old post office pavilion that they used to turn into the Trump Hotel in D.C., and there was a specific clause in the lease that said you couldn't lease this thing to government employees, and they made a ruling on that in Trump's case, and they said, oh, he's not a government employee. Well, then if he isn't, then of course, good news for you. No, you should get your fine back, because you obviously wouldn't be required to file a 278T, because that's for government employees of the executive branch, and you're not one, according to, oddly enough, another employee of the executive branch. I said another, but I mean some random employee of the executive branch, because, sir, you're not one. It's very weird, very interesting. Anyhow, among those trades were more than 300 purchases on April 8th, 2025, just a day ahead of Trump suddenly reversing course on his aggressive tariff regime, moving to pause them for 90 days. Trump's initial tariff plan announcement had sent U.S. stocks reeling as investors worried that the president had embarked on a wide-ranging trade war that could dent economic growth, and he had, and it did. After the reversal, major U.S. stock indexes shot up. It's indices, really, but April 9th, 2025 was the S&P 500's 8th best day in history, closing 9.5% higher. So if you happen to know that you're going to delay those tariffs, you can buy stocks at a great discount, because everybody was afraid of losing money by holding on to them and then getting hit with the tariffs. But he secretly knew the tariffs weren't going to happen. On Tuesday, the White House told NBC News neither the president nor his family has ever engaged or will ever engage in conflicts of interest. But, they wouldn't know it if they bit him in the ass, as people like to say. Although I can bet this with you, given what I've heard about Donald Trump, you'd have to be pretty brave to bite him in the ass, quite honestly. Anyway, and that's not about the Secret Service, although that does make it more dangerous. All actions by President Trump are great, is essentially what you get out of Anna Kelly, the White House spokeswoman. In her comment, the stocks purchased include shares of Chili's restaurant owner Brinker International. Okay. They have that. Buy the one with the song about the baby back ribs. I don't know what got him to do that. Military electronics manufacturer Kratos Defense, consulting firm Korn Ferry, financial firm Axos, not Axios, but Axos, New York Knicks and Rangers owner Madison Square Garden Sports, We know about that. And the Cheesecake Factory's parent company, according to the filing. So it is food heavy. And then defense. Sure, we're going to bomb some people. That seems like a good choice, too. The April 8th trade also includes purchases of $100,001. So, you know how they do things, the reporting is in ranges. The range is $100,000 to $250,000. There's, $1 in there to help differentiate. But okay. The April 8th trades also include a purchase of somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 of Apple shares. So that's food. And there were a few tech companies impacted by Trump's tariffs more than Apple. In 2025, manufacturing of the company's most critical products was done primarily in China, Vietnam, Thailand, and India. And the company's $1 trillion valuation rested on being able to make and sell its products as efficiently as possible. Apple shares rallied the next day by more than 15%, its single best day performance since 1998 in reaction to Trump's tariff pause. Woo-wee, he made money. A spokesperson for the Trump Organization, Trump's private business, added that blah, 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 he did nothing wrong. He invested in lots of things, not just things that automatically won when the tariffs were lifted, but everybody won the day tariffs were lifted. Oh, not the people who sold him stock, though. They lost. The president, vice president, and cabinet members are some of the many senior executive branch officials required to file annual financial disclosure reports. These filings detail their income, assets, liabilities, outside positions they hold, and their spouse's income. They're also required to disclose disbursements for travel or other perks such as sports tickets, which, by the way, he got $15,000 worth of tickets to the World Cup, but, that's dwarfed by the plane he was gifted and the giant ring and God only knows what else. These trades were not disclosed on any of Trump's subsequent transaction reports throughout 2025. However, there were previously 8 small bond purchases, like it wasn't that it was minor and they missed it. 8 bond purchases made it onto the list in a filing that was released by OGE on August 19th, 2025, but that filing showed no stock trades. Not clear why the trades weren't disclosed sooner, and the filing from Tuesday does not include any other details about the previously undisclosed purchases. White House, no further comment. Federal employees who are required to file these types of transactions report have a maximum of 45 days before they get fined, and guess what? $200 is the late filing fee. And it can be waived in certain cases. So he's probably going to end up having it waived for himself as well. So, all right, want to put that one on the record. It made a small splash the other day, just, something cumulative for the record. You know what? I'll close out by reading this piece from thefarce.org, which is LOL GOP's Substack type. I don't know whether he's actually on Substack or not, and you can't tell anymore from the URL. That's wise. But I thought you might be interested in this one. And do they credit him here somewhere? Does he list his own actual real name in all of this? I think it does. But, I don't see it on this page. That's interesting. But you can see it in the Instapaper version. Jason Sattler, who's LOL GOP, I believe. I think I've got that right. After all these years, I've forgotten. But he's got something that I think touches on these Trump accounts and Elon Musk that, maybe we want to marry together. He usually has a pretty good eye for these things. Trump is using your baby to keep Elon Musk's bubble bloated. I think this is about right, too. This is a piece from yesterday. SpaceX's own bondholders aren't sure the AI giant, it's now an AI giant, with a few rockets, can pay its bills. The federal government just found a buyer who can't say no. And by the way, that buyer is you and your kids and the federal government, all rolled up in one. What happens, it begins, when a company's valuation depends on people believing something its own bondholders don't? And if you're not, financially versed, I'm not. He goes on to explain why is it meaningful that the bondholders, as opposed to the shareholders, are important in this calculation. What happens when a company's valuation depends on people believing something its own bondholders don't? If you're Elon Musk, you get the federal government to help you convince a newborn's bank account. What? Before we begin, you've surely heard, you have on this show anyway, about the Trump account scam. Well, you've heard about Trump accounts, but I haven't explained to you why it's a scam. And I guess Jason will do that. On July 4th, the federal government began wiring $1,000, allegedly, into a bank account for every American baby born since January 2025. I guess if the account exists. Were you supposed to start the account, or did they start it for you? I don't have any such kids, though. Who is paying for these accounts Trump named after himself in honor of his discovery that it had been done? Somebody else did. Oh, we did it? All right, we'll call it a Trump account. Somebody else did it legislatively. Who's paying? You, of course, a.k.a. the federal government, as Republicans gut Medicaid and food stamps. But, of course, there is a tax avoidance scheme for rich dudes stapled to the whole thing. Tax avoidance for rich dudes. Why? Is that Elon Musk's music I hear? Yes, that's Elon listening to Foreigner just to feel scared. This summer on CNBC, Trump predicted that Elon would help pay for Trump accounts in stock rather than in cash. How are we going to get these $1,000 to put in all these? How are we going to pay for it? Elon, he'll pay for it. What? He claimed that he had not spoken to Musk directly since SpaceX's IPO made him a trillionaire. He had sent a note instead. But this plan had been in the work for weeks. 3 days before Trump's interview, Semaphore reported that the regime was already negotiating with SpaceX about a stock donation to these accounts at a time when Treasury's own rules only accepted cash. 2 days after Trump named Musk on television, the Treasury announced that companies could now donate publicly traded stock to the accounts. Once again, here's all the rules for it. You can do stock. No, the rules don't say that. Well, go change the rules then, or at least change the website to say that there's a different rule. Even if we can't change the rules, why go to all this trouble for a few $1 billion? Well, you know how it is with governments, right? Maybe someone in the regime or in Musk's camp looked at what SpaceX's own bondholders already believe. The week SpaceX sold $25 billion in new bonds, the value of those bonds fell by $305 million. I mean, it's not nothing, right? Out of $25 billion. That's 1.2%. Now, bondholders are making a narrow bet, all bondholders. This is what it means to buy a bond in a company. But in particular, if you're buying a bond in SpaceX, you're betting that SpaceX can cover its interest payments. Like you've bought a bond. The bond entitles you to interest payments from the company. You're betting that they can afford to do that and return your principal. Stockholders are making a far bigger bet, of course. SpaceX calls itself roughly an 80% AI company now in its own IPO filing, and its current valuation only makes sense if it eventually captures, by the way, how do you get to that kind of money? The valuation makes sense if SpaceX captures around 20% of all after-tax corporate profits in America. 20% of all corporate profits made by any company in America have to go into SpaceX pockets in order for their valuation to make sense. What's this mean? It means that their valuation doesn't make sense. But again, the bondholders, you're buying a bond and you're supposed to get your principal back plus interest by having people borrow money from you directly. And if you buy the bonds, you're making a bet essentially that you're going to meet your obligations, because they could default on their bonds and you lose your money. I mean, it's terrible for the company if they do that, but that's straight up what you're doing when you buy a bond. I believe they can pay their debts. And for most companies, that's probably true. But for companies like SpaceX, probably highly questionable. With a valuation that bent from reality, that you have to make 20% of all the corporate profits in America, forget the bond market totally. Just have baby bondholders. So that's what they do. A donation to a newborn's bank account doesn't need SpaceX to be profitable. Doesn't need SpaceX to be profitable. Sorry. It only needs enough people to believe it might be. Who cares that grown-up bondholders whose entire job is betting on whether a company pays its bills aren't really buying it? Apparently, we are all now in the business of protecting the trillion-dollar wealth of Donald Trump's biggest donor, the owner of the right-wing's ultimate online Death Star, X, of course, even as his entire fortune rests on a massive, irrational market bubble. And tragically, even our babies are going to be used to prop it up. And even if this weren't a play to keep Musk afloat, this scheme would still be pilfering the public good. Donating appreciated stock instead of cash lets a donor skip the capital gains tax due on a sale while still deducting the full market value. Economist Gabriel Zuckman has documented this maneuver as one reason billionaires pay a lower effective tax rate than the person who empties their office trash can. I'm sure you've heard that before. Very late for us to be playing the exit music, but we got to do it. A trillionaire who donates stock to a baby's account collects a deduction on wealth he never has to cash out. So you never actually have to answer the bet on whether or not your stock is actually worth the ridiculous inflated valuation that you claim it is. You just have to find people who will take the stock off your hands. And if you do find somebody to take the stock off your hands, you can deduct how much from your taxes? The claimed amount of its valuation, even though nobody has realized that it's an empty shell yet. You can take that off, and you pay no capital gains tax on the transaction because you never actually realized those gains by trying to sell your stock. It's really rather amazing. Meanwhile, at the same time, bondholders lost 1.2% of their bond value because basically people who are in the bonds market were saying, not a good bet. At least not at this price, because I don't think they're going to be able to pay their debts. Not if they have this price attached to them, and not if they got to pay off all these other things. Anyway, so now they dump all this stock, not only for a tax deduction, but it goes in to stand in the place of $1,000 that they were supposed to give each one of these kids. And if the stock's a dog and it's garbage, you're the loser in all this. But guess who wins? Elon Musk. He really needed the help. Take the money from babies. Literally taking candy from babies.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And taking candy from babies, not just because it's easy, but because he loves candy so much. That's really sad. Anyway, time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we're late in doing it, so let's see what's on top of the list. Trump appointed his E. Jean Carroll attorney to the federal bench. That's right, forgot about that. That and more next. We'll see you tomorrow.